Hello, my name is Epic Bubble, and I sometimes go by the name of Simon, and this is a thoughts video. This is my thoughts video on Whitehall Mystery. This is almost a standalone sequel to Letters of Whitechapel. It is a hidden movement game in which one player plays Jack, or at least someone who's doing Jack's dirty work, or Jack the Ripper, and the rest of the players play investigators trying to track this person down. Jack is hidden throughout the various game, and he will be moving secretly to different areas on the board, trying to, well, basically murder people going along. As investigators, you're trying to basically track down his path, or at least his trail, and then finally get to a spot where you can actually execute an arrest and actually nab him before you can do anything more. That's the basics of it. If you've ever played games like Scotland Yard, or Let's Do Whitechapel, or Spectre Ops, or even Fury of Dracula, then it's very much the same thing. Essentially, you have everyone working together to try and stop one other person from completing their nefarious plans. Now, in the past, I've never actually liked a lot of these hidden movement games, generally because they add too much to the game. I'm a big fan of Scotland Yard, and that's the game I played 20 years ago, I think, probably more 18 years ago. It's been around for a very long time, and that had a solid mechanic of you being this mystery person and you going to various locations using different travel cards. And then, of course, they started adding more and more complications to the system. Fury of Dracula I didn't like because it simply was too many layered mechanics. You could find Dracula and you still had to then try and beat Dracula as well, while at the same time you're still going to different cities and trying to get rid of those cities of various vampires. It was just a mess. And then, of course, Spectre Ops, you have the various player powers, and it becomes a bit more because one player is playing here. It's just a mess. And so when I played Whitehall Mystery, I was actually thrilled by just how simple it is. On your turn, Jack, or the murderer, is going to move one space, and he moves only on numbered areas. The investigators can move up to 2 spaces, and then they can, well, they don't go to areas or the numbers, they go to spaces in between those numbers, and then they can perform an investigation or execute an action, or execute an arrest, I should rather say. When you investigate, you're simply going to name out numbers, and if Jack has been to one of the spots, he puts a marker down. And you're basically trying to work out where Jack has started from and where he's going based on what trail you can kind of uncover. What's nice about the game is that's really it. You kind of are trying to pinpoint his exact location so that instead of investigating and seeing more of his trail, you can actually just nab him. You say, are you on number 198? I am performing an arrest. And hey, if he's on 198 when you do that, then you nab him and you win the game. Jack has to try and get to 4 different locations in 4 different quadrants of the board. And that's crucial about this game. That's what's so lovely about this game. In Scotland Yard, you're simply just trying to run away from these people. And it becomes quite easy when you can just keep taking a taxi, and people will never find out where you are, and they don't really have good enough information. You kind of occasionally reveal yourself. In Whitehall Mystery, you reveal yourself 4 guaranteed times, because each time you murder, or 3 guaranteed times, because each time you murder a person, you basically have to mark where the new body is, and you start the counter again. If you ever take more than 15 moves to get to the next location, then that's when you lose the game, as opposed to also getting arrested as well. This investigators are doing the exact same thing. They're just trying to simply catch you, but that's the beauty of it. It's simplicity at its finest. You can make the game easy for yourself and by setting locations further away from each other, but that isn't actually making the game easier for the investigators, because essentially you're giving yourself more ways to get to that location. If you choose locations that are very close together in all 4 quadrants, then all the investigators are always going to be breathing down your neck. Whereas if you, say, choose locations very far out on the board, you have more wiggle room, but you run the risk of not getting there in time, or someone getting lucky and picking up your trail quite quickly. What's great about the game also is that it plays relatively fast. You can get a game done in probably 30 minutes, and that's so good because it does the same thing that Mysterium does, and that is it allows another person to play the game. What I mean by that is oftentimes you have Fury of Dracula where it's like you spend 3 hours and one person becomes Dracula and then he wins or loses, and then you kind of talk about it. Whitehall Mystery does the same thing. However, you talk about it and you're like, oh, I can't believe you managed to get to that spot. And then the guy who was playing Jack says, well, if you think it's so easy, you do it. And then, of course, they do it, and they have not a horrible time, but they have a stressful time. It's intense. This game, you have the investigators constantly breathing down your neck because it's not a case of them being kind of weak. They could be there on the spot, and you're just trying to dodge the alleyways. You do have special powers as the murderer or the hidden suspect, and that is you can either move by boat, but it's very limited. You can double move, but of course that's 2 moves, and it allows you to move through a person. And then you also have alleyways, which kind of allow you to move through different areas depending on where they are. And it's all quite nice, but people can, whenever you take a boat ride, you instantly know that Jack could be on any one of those boat spaces or water spaces. If he does an alleyway, it's kind of like, well, okay, he was there, and these are the only places you can really get to. So you don't ever lose the trail if you manage to pick it up. What helps, though, is when you can be clever as Jack, and you can be like, okay, I'm going to go here, they're going to investigate that location, and I'm going to say I'm not there, and then my next turn, I can then move to that location. There is a restriction, of course, that you can't move back on yourself. You can't go to places you already have been, and that's quite good. Overall, the game is quite cunning. It is very fast-paced, and it plays nicely for both players. As a hidden suspect, it's kind of like there's an intensity about it of where this person can be. As the investigators, it's a great idea of working together and having a co-op nature. And of course, there's a crucial thing of executing an arrest when you try and nab Jack, because there's a moment of satisfaction when you do so. It feels so good to be like, I'm arresting you and I know you're there, and it feels so good, and everyone at the table is going to cheer for you, and of course the suspect is going to be so annoyed, but then the game is short enough so that the person who was annoyed can then be a co-op, he can be an investigator, and then see how well he does in that. And that's great. That's what I love about this game. This game is so nicely contained as a hidden movement game, and it doesn't ever outstay its welcome. We played through, I think, 3 games in one night, and almost every single person got a chance to be the murderer, and that's great. Now, I will have to say there are 2 complaints about the game, and they are relatively minor complaints, but they still are kind of. So firstly, it only plays up to 4 players, which kind of sucks because this is a really nice, not party game, but if you have a large group of players, it just kind of sucks that you can't get that many people involved. It plays up to 4, and that's it. It does annoy me that that's the only thing that allows it to happen, and obviously if you play with 2 players or 3 players, you still use all the investigators, which is fine. You know, as with a 2-player, it becomes more of a nice little puzzle. But I do wish it could add in another investigator just to make the game sit between the nice 4 to 5 player range that a lot of players with groups have to deal with. My other criticism, and I don't really say this a lot, but that is the theme of the game. I'm not a big fan of Jack the Ripper. I don't really like the Sherlock consulting detective. His cases that have to do with Jack the Ripper, I did not enjoy those, and I don't really enjoy the theme that much. I much prefer the theme of Scotland Yard, which is simply like, you are a jewel thief trying to escape Scotland Yard. In this, it's kind of like, yeah, your person, the suspect, he's basically moving around town, basically chopping up people and killing them. And it's quite grisly. We didn't play much of it, we didn't deal with it, we were almost tongue-in-cheek about the thing. Oh, you're going to visit another friend, are you? We didn't really touch on that a lot, and I think that's what you could do. I just don't like the kind of very brutal theme it has going for it. It's not brutal in its presentation at all. It's wonderful, this, numbered version of London. But it's that kind of thing that sits in the back of your head. You're like, oh yeah, we're tracking down the person who was basically a mass serial killer and doesn't really feel that good. And that's another thing. It's like, this game is perfect as a gateway game. You could introduce people who have never played board games before, and it has that same impact that Pandemic does, where you work as a team. So if you're seen as a person that always plays games, you can be the bad guy, and everyone's going to try and work to fight you, and it feels good for them to try and beat you. That's great, but it's that theme that doesn't sit well with me. Like, this would be a perfect game for children as well, like, from ages 10 and up, but again, it's that theme that this kind of drags it down a bit for me, and I kind of wish they didn't have that, because this is a really solid little hidden movement game that plays in 30 minutes, it's fast, it's effective, everyone has a good time. I can't recommend it enough. I think if I ever get a copy of it, which is hopefully going to be this year, I'm definitely going to try and play it as many times as possible, but I just wish the theme was a bit better. Anyway, those are my overall thoughts for Whitehall Mystery. Overall, I think it's an absolutely stunning hidden movement game, and if you're a fan of those kind of things, it's absolutely one you should pick up. But I also really like it's just the simplicity of it. It's not bogged down by tons of mechanics that just kind of counteract the fun nature of just, well, trying to figure out where a person is. And so that's it for me. I would love to hear your thoughts, of course. If you are a fan of maybe Fury of Dracula, perhaps you enjoy that more because of the layered mechanics, or perhaps you have played Scotland Yard in your past. Maybe 20 years ago you were an avid player of hidden movement games like Scotland Yard. Anyway, I would love to hear from you. Of course, remember to leave a comment, and of course, if you did enjoy this video, remember to hit that subscribe button. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.